Hello and welcome to this playlist on SAP and Power Platform here on the SAP on Azure YouTube channel. In the last video, we connected the SAP system to an SAP API management on the SAP Business Technology Platform and then used the SAP OData Connector from the Power Platform to fetch product information from a Power Automate flow. In a parallel video, I had shown how to get started within 10 minutes with Copilot Studio and SAP, and in this video, I want to combine both of these aspects. Recently, my colleague Michael Mergel had created a wonderful blog post that outlines the steps to create a Copilot accessing SAP using Copilot Studio. And in this video, I want to basically follow along his instructions. Copilot Studio is getting better and better so fast that I think it's always helpful to see what is possible right now. So let's take a look. Our starting point is again in an SAP OData service. In our case, as we've shown in previous videos, we have proxied this OData service via SAP API management in the integration suite on the SAP Business Technology Platform. So here we can add some policies, we can add some caching and other mechanisms. We can also use this for single sign-on later. Then what we have done is we have created a simple Power Automate flow. And from this Power Automate flow, we are using the new SAP OData Connector to select the product set entity. And then in this case, we're doing a filter on the category, in this specific case for notebooks. So this means if we now test this Power Automate flow, if we run it here in Power Automate, then we will get a list of products back from the SAP system, obviously filtered now for notebooks. And that's what we can see here. So here we have the long list of products coming back from the SAP system, and the categories everywhere, notebooks. Now with this, we want to build our Copilot Studio integration. And my colleague, Michael Mergel, has created a beautiful blog post that outlines the steps on how to get started, how to actually connect from Copilot Studio to an SAP OData service. And in this video, we'll basically follow more or less the same steps. So we'll guide through all the process of getting started with Copilot Studio and then connecting to an SAP OData service. As mentioned in our case, we are connecting via the SAP API management solution, but in the end, we are still connecting to an OData service. So here in Copilot Studio, and there's a free trial available as well. Here in Copilot Studio, we just click on Create to start the process to create a new Copilot. This new Copilot actually allows us to create a new scenario based on a conversation, on a natural language conversation. In our case, we know exactly what we want to do, so I'll just skip the configuration, give the Copilot a new name, and we also type in a description like this is what we expect our Copilot to do, and then we can just click on Create to start the creation of this specific Copilot. So now the really cool thing happens actually. So Copilot Studio has evolved quite a lot over the last few weeks and months. And creating a Copilot that now connects to an SAP system is actually easier than ever. So what we'll do is we'll just go to the actions and create a simple action that allows us to very easily interact with backend systems. So if we already have a flow, if we already have a connector, then we can just select it here from this specific list. In our case, what we want to do is we want to create a new Power Automate flow. So we'll scroll down here and select Create a new flow. This will actually open up Power Automate with a beautiful entry point and an out point basically. So in the input, in the trigger from Copilot, we can ask for certain parameters. In the output, we can return parameters back to Copilot Studio. Obviously, the cool thing is the part in the middle. And in the part in the middle, we'll use, again, the SAP OData service, very similar to what we saw before in our Power Automate flow. So we'll use the query OData entity. And the first thing is we need to create a connection to our SAP system. So here I could select already an existing one, but in this specific case, I'm just starting and creating a new one. So I'll give it a name. I will use basic authentication for now. Later on, we can also talk about single sign-on. Then I'll put the OData base URL. So this is basically the URL from our SAP API management that then connects to the GW sample basic service. I need to provide a username and password. Again, this is just a basic authentication for now. And then, as we have seen in previous videos, we also need to provide an API management key so that it's not only protected via username and password, but also via this API management key. With this information, I can browse all the available entity sets. And as mentioned, we want to focus on products. So I'll select the product entity set. Now, as we've seen also before, I can also add additional properties. So one thing is, maybe there are hundreds and thousands of products in the SAP system. So for this demo, I'll just filter for the first 10 entries. So I'll use the top 10 entry. And then for the filter, I can actually enter the category specification. So let's start again with just category equals notebooks. So this is now a hard-coded thing, but we can actually ask that Copilot Studio will ask the user or will require the user to enter a specific category. And obviously with this then we need an input parameter. So we'll call the input parameter category. And now we can make it dynamic. So instead of the hard-coded notebooks, what we'll do is we'll just say use the information that I got from the original trigger point and make this as the filter criteria for my company. With this, actually, the only thing left is that we need to return the results back to Copilot Studio. So what I'll do is I'll create a new variable. This is again here a string. We'll call it list of products. We'll also add then here the output parameter. And theoretically, we could add the body, the results from our SAP OData string. The problem here is that at the moment, Copilot Studio expects a string value. So what we'll do, we'll just say convert the body of the query operation into a string and return this result back to Copilot Studio. So with this, we can just save it and we can run a first test. So the test execution asks us now this time for the category, and we'll enter notebooks here. And then once the test is actually run, so once we connect via SAP API management to our backend system, we can see in the body this string that we return back to the SAP system, to Copilot Studio. So here you can see the list of products, and you can see a long list of products that we are getting back from SAP. With this, we're actually good. So what we can do is we can just maybe save this this Power Automate flow. So we'll give it a new name. Fetch SAP products from the SAP with a certain category. We'll save it. We'll publish it. And now if we go back to our Copilot Studio, we can just refresh the screen here. So you can see there's a refresh button. And now we see our newly created Power Automate flow directly here as a selection criteria. With this, we can continue with the creation of our action. So we see that we have an input parameter, we have an output parameter, and now we can enhance the description of this input parameter. So basically, we will tell Copilot Studio what we expect in this specific action. So here we expect a product category, and the product category that we can actually select is something that we can quickly look up in the SAP system. So there is another entity set called VH, Value Help Category Set, and there we can see all the properties that are allowed in the SAP system or that are available in the SAP system. So we'll just use all of them, we'll put them in here, and now we basically explain Copilot Studio that when you execute this action, we expect a product category, and it has to be one of these specific values here. So with this, we have the input defined. The next step is to look at the output. So as we've seen before, when we tested the Power Automate flow, the output is just this very long JSON string. So what we need to do is we need to tell again this action that yes, we are getting return a list of products, but actually what we want is we want to take this list of products from the SAP system, but we want to return this as an HTML table with certain properties. We don't want to have everything from the SAP system, but for example, we want the product ID, the category, the name, the description, and maybe the price. With this, we can just save this specific action, and then we're done. So if we now save it again, we can describe the overall action. And that's actually pretty important, because when we then interact with the Copilot Studio, we want to make sure that Copilot Studio identifies that this is the action to call whenever someone asks for product information from the SAP system. So here, this is get a list of products from the SAP. And obviously, this could be even more descriptive. We could add additional content, but now we're actually good to go. So if we finally save this action now, so you can see it's active here, we can actually test before we even deploy this to Teams or to another website or something like that. And we can test now our action here in Copilot Studio. In order to get the best results and to also make it really natural, we can also change here or activate here the generative functionalities, that we really have generative AI capabilities. And you'll see in a second that this really makes a huge difference when interacting with the Copilot. So now let's give it a try here. Let's really ask for a list of products in the SAP system. But in order to also trace what's happening, we can actually activate here this functionality that will show us which action Copilot Studio selected and is executing here. So we'll just ask here, show me products from the SAP system. And you'll see on the left-hand side now that Copilot Studio identified what is the right action. So it found our fetch SAP products from a certain category. And it also noticed in order to execute this action, we actually need a product name or a category name. So it's waiting, it's asking us for a category. And you can see out of this long list that we provided, it actually gives us a subset of options. So for example, here we can just look for camcorders or something like that. So we can use one of these. Obviously, we could use any other category as well. But in this case, we'll just take this one. Now, we execute this Power Automate flow for the very first time, which means we again need to authenticate, because the user that is using here Copilot Studio, or potentially in the future that is using this Copilot out of Teams or something like that, we don't know if this user has permissions in the SAP system. So but for the very first time, it asks us to connect to the SAP system, to basically verify the connection. You can see right now, this Power Automate flow is not yet connected to the SAP system. So I need to click on Connect. I need to select the connection details. So in our specific case, this is the on-prem scenario here. I click on Submit. And now this flow is actually connected. So if I go back here, if I refresh this page, or I could have also clicked on Retry, but let me do this again. So I will ask, show me products from the SAP system. Then we will again trigger this specific action. So you can see again a category is missing, but you can also see that we now got a much longer list of categories. So you can see this AI capabilities, this non-necessarily deterministic. Maybe I should have provided a more restrict description in the action to say, always return this list of categories. Now here, everything executed now, and you can already see here in the small snippet, we got the technical response from the SAP system. But on the right hand side, you can see the beautifully rendered response from SAP that now Copilot Studio rendered in this specific screen. So out of this technical documentation or return results, we got this beautiful scenario. Now let's do the next step. And this time, let's not only say we want products from the SAP system, but we want notebooks from the SAP system. And now really, really cool thing from this AI, from this generative Copilot Studio integration happens. Because now when the action is triggered, we have all the information. So you can see the notebooks category was already pre-filled, and you can already see now we got the response back from the SAP system. Copilot Studio is still rendering, is still working on the results. And now you can see this longer list of notebooks from our SAP system here in Copilot Studio. So it was really easy. We just created an action in Copilot Studio. We defined a Power Automate flow from this action. So whenever this action is triggered, it should call the Power Automate flow. In our case, the Power Automate flow is really, really easy. We could obviously make this even more sophisticated, but in our case, it just calls the SAP OData service, and then it returns the information and is rendered here in Copilot Studio.